Hi, friends. Hopefully, y'all can hear me. I think that we're good to start. They can hear me. Well, sure. Well, welcome back to Water Builders Weekly, guys. Come and hang out with a couple of geeks every week. You get the latest news on some World Builders Market occasionally. We tell you about some of the geeks doing good stuff that we do. Sometimes we got some nerdy tangents, which we'll absolutely share with you today. And sometimes you can catch a special guest. Today, our guest will just be a bunch of notebooks.
Yes, notebooks. Can you hear me
And
now?
special notebooks they are.
Hopefully people can hear me now. Yay.
Oh, cool. Thanks, guys. It's always helpful.
It would not be World Builders Weekly without some kind of audio problem. So, yeah, today's guest, we are celebrating, as Zoe pointed out, this is Embrace Your Geekiness Day. And if there's one thing that we are all geeky about here at World Builders, it is notebooks. It's I wouldn't call it an addiction. We can quit anytime we want.
That's right.
Yeah, sure. But before that, of course, we have to go into talking about trivia. So let us go and talk about. Oh, I almost put up the trivia with the new trivia question open. So let's make sure that's not going to happen. There we go. Now we're on the no one. Let's talk trivia. All right. Zay, do you want to read the last one? Or no, I should probably read the one last time because I don't think you were born yet. Hey, it's not a burn. It's just a fact of life. Some of us have been able to enjoy the delightful world of geekiness for somewhat longer than others. Not saying it makes us better, it just makes us more. So in the 1989, hey, little Skyfae, yay, hi. In the 1989 film, raise your hands in the chat if you actually saw this in the theaters, Back to the Future 2, we are shown a futuristic version of Marty McFly's home in the Hilldale subdivision. What is Marty McFly's address? And the question is, hey, hopefully somebody will go into the script and put in the trivia answer because the trivia answer is not in the script. And I confess, I saw the movie, but now look at that. Way to make me have egg on my face.
The answer is a mystery.
Yes. Hey there, trivia team at World Builders.
Does anybody in chat know the answer?
We could really use answer to the trivia question.
It's 3793 Oakhurst Street.
Ah, good. I was actually testing to see if anybody knew that. That was my first guess.
Nobody can hear me apparently.
Now people can't hear you? How about now? Try that.
Hello, can anybody hear me? Oh, they could hear me. It's just super quiet. Here, it's probably me.
Yeah, now it's fixed. Nope, it was user error. Hey, but at least I'm not going to ruin anything by saying that at least we have OBS working consistently, because that would just be silly. Why would I say something like that and jinx us? But all right, so let's go on to the new trivia, and this one is from some kind of new, I don't know, they call it anime. Is that what those are called?
Probably not, because it doesn't register.
It's like a Japanese cartoon form, animes, something like that.
I feel like this is being said so wrong right now. But the new trivia question is, Okay, and as you guys know, don't answer this in the chat. Please answer this in our DM so everybody has a fair chance. Who is vice captain for Karasuno season 1 Haikyuu? I don't know this. I don't know this show, but it looks like something that young Zay probably would have watched a lot of. So yeah, Yu Yu Hakusho, One Note, Dragon Ball Z, all those are good.
And apparently the correct
Ray, did you ever
pronunciation
get
is
into anime?
Anime, but you know.
Oh, you were trying to say anime before?
Yeah, I was just putting
Just
a little
as a
Midwest
joke?
twang on it. You know. Yeah, and apparently this trivia question comes from a really cool kid. Would that kid possibly happen to live in Madison? That is.
We know where all the kids live.
Where all the cool kids live. Hey, all my cool kids live in Madison, so yeah, that makes sense. Madison is the place for cool kids. Madison, Wisconsin, that is. We were talking this morning. There's probably about, every state probably has its own Madison area, but for us, there's only one Madison.
As you guys know, though, you're here for us to geek out about notebooks and probably their corresponding existential crises that come with everything that notebooks are, is, and represent, at least for me.
Yeah, and so I will say, first of all, I know for a fact that our interests overlap because that beautiful intro that you see to World Builders Weekly every week was done by Ember and Talir. And there was a day when I was like, I'm going to embrace my inner nerd and I'm going to actually watch my favorite Twitch channel, which is The Pen Addict. And I was on The Pen Addict, had nothing to do. It was just like, I'm not at work, I'm not having to worry about a thing. And all of a sudden I see in the chat, Ember and Talir. And I'm like, oh, I thought I was spending time away from World Builders, but no, I'm just hanging out with where the World Builders crowd hangs out. So I know that it's there, but this particular one, this episode of World Builders Weekly, I am reading a book, and to go into another aspect of my nerdiness, I read those sort of productivity and management style books. Hi, Ember and Talir. There we are. Yay. I read all those kinds of books, and I'm reading one, or listening to one actually now, that's called The Deadline Effect. And it's about how, if you tell somebody, hey, get that to me whenever, they won't get it done. But if you say, hey, you have a 1 week to do this, they will get it done. And if you say, they will also wait till like the last day of the week to do it, and that kind of thing. And that's not what we're going to talk about here, but there was a particular part in the introduction, and I'm going to read that word for word here. In an essay called Procrastination and the Extended Will, two philosophy professors, Joseph Heath and Joel Anderson, discuss how cognition is best thought of not as the firing of neurons in a vacuum, but as the interplay, this is the important part, between our brain, our bodies, and the environment. And they cite the example of multiplication. While very few people can multiply 3-digit numbers in their heads, almost all of us can do it on paper. And here's the takeaway quote that really made me go, hey, we should talk about this. When trying to characterize human beings as computational systems, they write, the difference between person and person with pencil and paper is vast. And I kind of went, mind blown. That means like a notebook is like a power ring from the Green Lantern. It's like you can use a notebook to design a war machine. You can use a notebook to write a sermon that will fire people up. You can write a notebook to write a poem that will make someone fall in love with you. You can use a notebook to plan out the next 50 years of your life. I mean, there's just so many different things you can do. You can use the notebooks to observe your enemies and get their secrets and weaknesses and, all those things. A notebook is a way to, it is literally a humanity force multiplier of capability. So, with that buzzing in my head, I thought, hey, why don't we talk about our geekiness about notebooks? Now, this is something that, by the way, all of the World Builders staff have talked about at one point or another. At one point, they helped me get rid of some of my compulsive field notes habit, and I was able to give a bunch of field notes to various members of the staff.
Super cool ones too.
Not that I
Like
got rid of all of them. I
Yeah.
obviously still have this one, but I have actually more than a few. I gave them the blank ones, or the mostly blank ones. But yeah, I thought we'd start this out, Zabe, just by showing off notebooks, and I've been talking a lot, so let's start with you. Like, what's the first notebook you want to share with us?
So, I mean, okay, I'm gonna like caveat introduction. Different notebooks serve different purposes for me, and I find that I will explore the brand and what I'm looking for kind of based on this like purpose-driven incentive to get me to actually like engage with different aspects of my life, whether that's my workouts, my art, journaling, stuff like that. So my first one definitely relates to like writing and like journaling, but also kind of like creativity. So like this is my journal, but along with my journal, I tend to create different little art pieces when I'm writing. So for instance, a good one is when Dan and I were just we're redoing the shelves that line the walls in our apartment. I did kind of like, I talked about it, but it was written against this kind of wood, I guess, design. And these kind of drawings for me are a sweet release because there's no like incentive. This is my personal journal. I'm not selling this art. I'm not sharing this art with anybody. Like my best friend left and I wrote a little thing in this glass of whiskey that I was drinking about how, I saw Lizzie and now she's leaving. And this one is actually done in a notebook that you recommended to me, Gray, which is the Airship journal. And really, really love this. If you guys have ever heard of, we have the exact same one. I think they only had like 2 or 3, but really high quality paper in here for specifically using pen to paper. So if you guys have ever used those stone paper notebooks, it's a very similar feel. There's no, the paper doesn't have any gradient. It doesn't have any texture to it. It's very much just smooth, kind of like if you've ever used painted slate as like an artist, it has a similar feel. So for me, this Airship notebook, which has also had like a Kickstarter, you had said, Gray, it's a little bit more of a niche thing, the high quality. This for me, I think of this notebook as, this makes me want to draw. I want to journal in this. The blanks pages feel like opportunity rather than a vast vat of nothingness. So yeah, that's my first one, and those are kind of the things that like I enjoy about it, I guess.
So I have a question for you, Zay.
What's
on
that?
Yours, not on the side that has little icons, but on the back, does it say something?
Mine has the Airship logo, and then it says "Ideas, not art."
Right. Okay. So, that's what I think was funny, is because you do have art in yours. So you're using it wrong. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but so this is the thing, though, is like the interesting thing about that is I actually have like in here entire like setups of drawings that I'd like to do, but only as their like preliminary ideas. So it kind of serves that purpose too. So I would argue that this isn't really like my art. This is just me like expressing what happened in my day, but the way that my brain expresses itself. So like it is written.
I mean, yeah, I was joking.
I know. I think it's kind of an interesting.
I use mine for sketchnoting. So like it has like notes from classes I've taken. There's a design for a 3D printed Zentangle case that I wanted to make, and things like that. But also there's a lot of blank pages, and I bought this over a year ago, and that's because this kind of runs into the, it's so nice and it's such a slick paper that if I'm not doing something that is important, it's also not cheap. I have a tendency to not draw on it, and that is an issue. I actually wanted to go back. I'm going to go back to the way this all started for me, which is this is a notebook. See if I can find a date in here. Yeah, so this notebook actually, one of the dates in the middle of it is 2014, February 7th, 2014. But I used to just carry around these little Moleskine notebooks, and one of the things I'd like about them, yeah, interesting. I have notes in here of things that I read when I was reading The Legend of Bagger Vance, or the different quotes and things like that. And I love, I used to love the paper inside Moleskine, and I love that I could like put things on. Like there's a sticker from Stogies on Grand, which is a cigar shop that a friend of mine works at, and then of course we have Death Wish coffee and things like that. Yeah, Moleskine.
Oh, there's accidentally probably, here's one more. Yeah, Moleskine are great. I don't know if you find this, but if you don't use a very specific pen or a pencil,
that's why I don't use them anymore.
It bleeds through the other side, which is what a stifling thing. Because like every time you turn a page, it's supposed to feel like fresh, and you turn it and it's like leaked through. It feels like so like my week's already tainted.
yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that's actually, I see a lot of people in the chat saying they love field notes. Now, I do love field notes. I love the aesthetic. I used to, when I lived closer to Chicago, I would be a regular appearing at their store in Chicago. I once went on a date with someone to the Moleskine store. Like that was our date, was to go and look at the Moleskine place. But I run into that problem, and this is kind of where the pen addict thing goes into, is that I like using fountain pens now. And I have yet to find, like my Moleskine notebook, my field notes, even my Baron Fig, which is kind of like a bougie Moleskine with thicker paper. Even that tends to have, you tend to get some bleed when you write through it. And it's really frustrating. Like I actually tried this out today. I did, you can see the word, where is that? Test there. And then you turn the page, and I don't know why I wrote the word war pig, but you can see that bleed right there.
What is so frustrating to me though is that Moleskine, like, so here's an old version, for instance, of one of my planners. Moleskine has like the nicest layout for me for planners that I've ever encountered. It's just like the perfect section, and anybody who's even the tiniest into buying stationery and or using it, which are two different hobbies, would know that like the layout of things is like so important. It's like if I was a person who bullet journaled, which I didn't, this like layout is exactly how I think I would try to give myself the space for notes, like brain dump areas, plus the thing, and then the stickers like all that come in it are like just mwah. So make some better paper, Moleskine. What the fuck?
No kidding. So I feel like you did a good segue into talking about like functional notebooks, like things you use for work kind of situation. And so I'm going to show one that I wish I liked it better. And again, part of it's the paper, but I did actually use it for bullet journaling and things like that. These are some daily spreads that I had. But it's called the Panobook, and it is deliberately made long enough that it can fit under, like right by your keyboard, or you can open it up. And one of the cool things about it is that, I'm going to open to a blank page. So it's got the dot grid idea, but if you can see, like right there, you see that little curve. This, by the way, will not be a podcast because we have too many. Basically, there's little guidelines so that you can easily divide the page in half. Like at the top, it has a little slot where the halfway mark is. and then there's ways you can divide it into thirds, and so it's very easy to sort of block it off. You know, it's got good paper, but again, doesn't really work with the fountain pen. And this one, I think, might be. This is called a Smart Notebook, and it's by a company called Biblau, and it's very much for, you know, project tracking. And you know, it's kind of funny. Like, the project there is buy a house, and that was when I started that. The project is done. The project has been done. You can see the notebook came in incredibly handy for the process.
You should write under it, 100% complete.
Yep, all done. But then I did use, like, the next thing, I had a meeting for Business Accelerator, and I did, you know, sketchnoting. So, you know, there's stuff in there. The problem is that there's so many, I don't really have them separated by purpose. And so it's like whatever one's closest or whatever. Yeah, I feel like, you know, do you have a one that you find especially useful for work?
So I used to use my Moleskine. So I had two. So I had like this big one was absolutely for work. And if you guys saw when I opened it, there's tons of sticky notes.
Is that softbound or hardbound?
It was great. This is hardbound. I only buy from Moleskine specifically the hardbound ones. And then I had this other one, which was like my personal one. These unfortunately ran out, and it ran out in the middle of the year. And I have this really weird thing about, I don't want to waste that much paper. So in the middle of the year, I'm absolutely not going to buy a January to December notebook and then not use half of it. That's a horrible feeling for me. So I just bought this really cheap one. And I will say that it is it's from the Barnes and Noble website. If anyone's interested to talk to the dying company of Barnes and Noble, don't sue us. Barnes and Noble, you're great.
We're selling their stuff. Of course they won't sue us.
But so I got this one specifically because it starts in the middle of July, and I will say having this cheaper planner that I am currently using for work has some sense of relief in that when I normally use my planners, I like everything to be very organized. I'll try to keep things like looking a certain way, even though it's just a planner. But when you have something that is kind of shitty, like the note taking or the dumping into it feels less like if it's not perfectly organized, it feels like okay, if that makes sense.
I mean, you mentioned bullet journaling, and I mean, I do enjoy. I often call it organizational porn. It's when you look at things that looks better than, unrealistically pretty and overdone, and also something that would never happen in real life, which is like some of the bullet journal spreads that you see. I mean, hell, I even use the word spreads. So, but yeah, it's I do like the discipline of it. Like, this is an old bullet journal type thing I would do, and like I would have a space down here for things I'm gratitude for. Notes and errata that I would have a space for, and then I'd have like goals, tasks, wins, and then my schedule down the side. And just doing that little bit in the morning kind of helped center at the beginning. So he just bought an Airship notebook.
It's so good,
It's a slippery slope, Zoe. It's a slippery slope.
So the other one that I use for actually I have two. I have a work one and a personal one. This is actually my personal one, but is that Dracus book from I have a little light here from work actually. So the front of it, I'm sure you guys have all seen this. It's in World Builders Market. It's like the mating habits of the common Dracus. And this thing, it's just a notebook. But I will say I like it because one, the cover is soft but like is leather, so it still feels nice. And there's something about the lines in there that are nice nicely spaced, which is really important to me because
Mm-hmm.
if I'm writing fast, I write in kind of this pseudo cursive that generally kind of demands space on the page, but also if I have too much space, it's like I have taken, you know, like a paragraph's worth of space to write like what should be a sentence. Um, but this I like this a lot, and I just kind of organized it with some um,
Yeah.
somebody.
Well, Vast
Post
Insider
it.
said has that and is the official current main player campaign notebook. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I don't know. You would either really like this or you would really hate it. But this is a thing from a company called Ink and Volt. I think this would make it. And what they do is it's called Grids and Guides. And so it's got a different layout on different pages. So like this one here has a radial layout, which is kind of hard to see. I wonder if you turn the lights up, it'll be easier.
So I think on the actual stream you can see it. You can't really on Zoom, but I'm
see if
looking
that
at our
helps.
Twitch.
So this one has a grid layout.
But yeah, like Baston Sider said, I agree. This would be perfect for like a campaign size. For my personal one, I have a couple of chronic illnesses, and it really helped me kind of track what I need to, which I've actually, I don't think cure is the right word for chronic illnesses, but I don't have any more symptoms, which is nice. And it really, it is like just big enough that you can feel like you can wholeheartedly dive into like a project or a campaign without feeling like when it's done, you now have this like 300 pages of notebook you're not going to use. And it's nice because it also feels accessible. Like when I want to go back and like look at something, it also isn't so huge that it's like, these are my, 500 blocks worth of art history that I did some math in as well. Like it's accessible.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole phenomenon, and I've tried to get into it and had a hard time with it, called Midori notebooks or traveler notebooks, which are the long, thin ones. And they're made in a way so that you can like put in and take out. Like this particular, my partner Natasha actually dyed this leather for me, and gave me the book. And if there's any True Dungeon aficionados in there, this is actually the notebook that I carried with me when I was a guide for them. And Vast Insider was talking about like pasting things in. So like I had this book to be the narrator and guide for the True Dungeon thing. And it was nice because I could still have my script here, ready for me, but at the same time, I wasn't having to break character kind of thing.
That's interesting. Like long and skinny, that makes sense.
Yeah. And the nice thing about it is I can have like blank things where I can sketch, but then the next notebook over can have grid lines on it, and another one could have regular lines.
I have this tiny guy for traveling. It actually has, so like here is the beginning is an intro of like I was in Segal in France. But the one thing I like about these really small guys, this is another one, I think, I was going to say it's Moleskine, but it actually says on the back it's from Follies Art Creation, which probably I bought in London. But the nice thing I think about these is the artifact sense of things. Like I have a ton of dried flowers in here from when I was traveling.
Oh, wow.
And it feels, I mean, I guess you'd just call it a pocketbook, but there's so many pages, and I think those long and skinny ones make more sense if you have long and skinny pockets.
Yeah,
like when you're a lady, like I feel like that is just like it doesn't fit in your purse. it can't fit in your pocket. So something like that's a little bit closer to the size of my hand is something that's more accessible to me.
Yeah. Well, I have seen, and actually I made one, I didn't bring with me, but you can make like the cover like this, but that's made for these, for field notes. And so that way you can have like a field note that has lines, a field note that has sketch, and a field note that has this, or that has a grid all in one thing. I feel like I wish we could, nerd, yeah. Yes, Karim Shad, I am definitely, that's the whole theme of this, is that we are nerds, totally. Feathers in the book. Well, that makes sense, Zoe, because you write things about dirty birds. So, how about gimmicks for notebooks? Do you have any gimmicky notebooks that you bought because you're like, oh wow, that's a cool thought?
I think I got close. I really got close to buying that stone paper one. I don't know the brand at this point. The problem is that once you buy one, Instagram and Facebook are like, here's every notebook company that's ever existed. So I tend to I tend to fall away from that because, like I had said before, it's a joke, but it's real. Like, collecting stationery and using stationery are completely different hobbies. And if I just collect a lot of stuff that looks nice, my anxiety and starting a project, it'll never fucking happen. So I only buy stuff with like intended purposes.
Yeah, I mean, I have intentions of purposes. I mean, like, for example, I was feeling bad about how many notebooks I was using. And so I invested in a Kickstarter for the Rocket Book, which now is like become a big thing. This is actually one of the first ones. But the whole gimmick for this, so you see that little circle in the front? That's so you know where to put the coffee cup full of water when you put it in the microwave, because once you put it in the microwave, the ink will disappear off the pages. And so you have an app, and if you see in the pages in here, let's see. So if you see in the page, there's like a little QR code. So there's an app that, like, when you take something, the other thing about it is you can also have little icons along the bottom.
And you've used it and it works?
I have, and it does. I have several, and I have used them, and this one has been like used and microwaved. You can still see some of the faint lines on them. Because the original ones didn't work so well. Now the new ones, you don't microwave them, you actually wipe them down. They're like mini whiteboards. But again, you run into the issue of you can only do it if you use friction pens, Frixion, which are erasable pens. And Friction's not a bad pen, perfectly valid pen, but, and for some reason they call this bedpan, it's a perfectly good pen. But I, again, have become a snob, and I like to use fountain pens. And they don't sell the Friction ink outside of the pens that are pre-made, so I can't like fill up my fountain pen with Friction ink, much as I would like to. But yeah, and Jeannie is the same thing. It's like, I love it, but no. Zoe, the thing is that it is saved. You have an app that you take pictures of it, and actually it even has text recognition, so you can actually then search it, the text that you've done. So this is another question in regards to this. When you're writing in your notebooks, besides your fountain pens or just your fountain pens, do you have like specific pens or specific things that you prefer for each notebook? Funny you should ask that. I mean, I have the fountain pens, which I tend to use most of the time. But then, like, so to show how deeply the wallet, this is my wallet. And my wallet happens to, inside of it, have a little notebook. And
of course it would.
At the end is a little pen that I can then use to write. And believe it or not, this is actually a really good pen. So yeah, I mean, this pen and this one, I love myself. I love the Fisher Space Pen that you can just put in your pocket. But I also have a tendency to, I've owned probably 20 of them, and I keep losing them because I put them in my pocket, and then they go in the laundry, or they just drop out of the pocket or something like that. But yeah, wallet with a notebook and pen. I mean, you know, and I bought this one after looking at a larger wallet that was made to hold one of these. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Ember Nalir said that she's used the Traveler's Notebook setup and uses it with a pen, a fountain pen. Do you use a special ink for that, or is it what kind of paper do you use in those notebooks? I'd be interested in knowing. Not that we're trying to pimp products that we don't already use, but yeah. Looking at my notebooks to see if there's any that I haven't talked about right now.
Do you have specific like parts of your, so like besides just the general of like work and personal, do you have specific projects that you put towards specific notebooks?
Projects for specific notebooks?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. No, it's kind of whatever my current notebook is, that's what the project goes into. I mean, I have had projects that were big enough that I dedicated a notebook to them. But yeah, not really.
Because I guess, for instance, yeah, like I was thinking of like, I actually just realized this is also Moleskine. And I know because I always order the ones with my initials on them. But I do have one that I have like, so it would have to definitely be ongoing projects, so that doesn't make sense for me to have a total, but yeah, I have like one that's dedicated just to my workouts.
Oh, okay.
And my lifting and stuff, so I can see like my progress. It also, in some of them, I talk about potentially different things that made a difference, or sometimes I have like checklists, and then it allows me to see like, you know, my current weight increments if I'm deciding that I'm gonna, you know, or if I'm doing surplus or deficit. I think having like a long-term kind of reference for that stuff is super great, because
do you actually go back and look at it though? That's the big thing. Like I say that I do things, but I haven't opened up these things in years.
Oh, I totally use it. I reference it when I go to the gym almost every time, because, you know, sometimes I'm looking for repetitions, sometimes I'm looking to try something new, sometimes I'm like, what weight increment was I at so that I can go up about 5 or 10 pounds. Yeah, I totally reference it a lot. And like, for instance, during after my vaccine, I had to take a break from my workouts, and I didn't get back into it for a while. So when I was getting back into it, having this felt really grounding. So I would say, yeah, I totally go back to it.
Yeah, Hirmshaw brought up, I use Google Sheets for that, cross-platform, and I can't see what else. Oh, and can use it to create graphs.
Yeah.
And you're saying nerd to us, really? I mean,
yeah.
There was also, he had a question. Do you end up using notebooks as sketchbooks and then being frustrated that you doodled over a place you're writing something important?
Sketchbooks and then being I used to do that all the time when I was in school. Most of my notebooks would have just like fucking doodles in them all the time, and especially long lectures. Even if I enjoyed the subject, I'd start like doodling, and then there'd be this big ass block of space and these beautiful notes that I wrote. So I would then go through my notebooks when I was studying, which also helped me remember information really well, and rewrite a lot of my notes that I thought were like pertinent or important in like a very nice fashion. But yeah, I don't have ADD or ADHD, which I think happens to a lot of people for the doodling thing. But I do have OCD. So yeah.
Something else that I scrolled back, and the question was back for those flowers that you had in there. You're like Yasha. Are you saving the flowers to bring to your barbarian wife's grave when you gather the courage to return from exile?
That's exactly what's happening.
Called out. Yep. No,
Yeah.
you're.
No, yeah, there are a lot of really beautiful little items in here. And, it's kind of nice because, like, I have little memories in here. Like, these are some leaves from some of the trees that I really liked in Italy. And they're a lot different than some of the leaves we have on the trees here in the U.S. Um, but
Since I date a horticulturist, my brain goes, oh my God, are those invasive species? What did she do coming across and not
yeah,
declaring these?
yeah, I don't think that these are gonna be of any value to the soil. They're probably quite dead.
I mean,
Yeah.
hope so.
No, I also don't just drop these.
Hmm.
They belong only to the notebook. So I don't think I will not be putting any invasive species into the U.S. Promise.
So, yeah, just no too many horticulturists. The thing that I didn't talk about, and actually you can see some of my books in some of the ad campaigns that we put out there, because when Beth was doing some photos, you guys took some of my daily page journals, because some of them are like leather bound and look old and ratty and stuff, and included those in the picture. And that's kind of the one notebook that I use more than anything else is whatever I'm writing my daily pages in. But I have this, I won't say it's OCD, but it's like a compulsion in that if I start doing daily pages in a book, I have to keep on doing the daily pages until the book is full before I can go on to the next one. And I say that because sometimes I'll have a notebook and I'll be like, I like this notebook, this is great, and I'll write through it. And then another pretty shiny thing will catch my eye and I'll be like, I'm going to write this one. And then I start writing, I hate it, but I have to keep writing in it until it's done. And right now I'm in that situation. I actually have a spiral bound cheap paper notebook that I'm finally getting through with. And I can't wait to do it because after I'm done with that, I'll get to start using this notebook for my daily pages, which is, again, gimmicky notebooks. It looks like it's a lined notebook, right? Except all those lines are actually really, really, really tiny text, which is the full
Oh, right.
text of the picture of Dorian Gray. Or the portrait of Dorian Gray, is that what it's called? Whatever. But I just like, oh my God, this is going to be so much fun to write in.
Yeah. You know what's funny is those notebooks that are designed to be like perfect for people with anxiety or people who
Oh yeah.
procrastinate or all of those. Anytime I open one of those notebooks, there's such an overwhelming amount of the stuff on the page that it does the exact opposite of what it's supposed to do. For me specifically, I'm sure
Mhm.
that they work for a lot of people, but like if I open a notebook and there's 8 sections and one is for brain dump and one is how did this affect you today? Blah blah blah. I don't even want to start. Like it's just already overwhelming.
Yeah. Why are you asking me? What do you care? Um, Baston Cider said they want this notebook. I got that one from Half Price Books, and they actually have a series of them. They are called a novel journal, and they have like one that is Dracula and one that I think is Frankenstein, and then this particular one.
I don't know if that's Gillette, or Gillot, but
Goulet.
Embrandt Goulet, okay, has written something about regarding the fountain pens y'all like.
Hmm. And
But
honestly, just give a shout out to the Pen Addict channel. You wouldn't think that having a guy sit there and talk about pens and notebooks for a few hours would be entertaining, but it really is. It really, and he's just a fun guy. Um, Blank bullet journals are stressful enough. Yeah, yeah. Or you watch somebody's who says, "Here's my bullet journal for this month" and stuff like that. To be honest, I should also say that one of the biggest things that I use is my iPad with my pen here, and I do take a lot of notes in a program called Notability, which you can have different notebooks in. And well, that it hurts my brain not to have the paper on there in terms of having something that I always have with me. I can't beat it. Oh, the Brothers Grimm have a novel journal too. That would be cool.
We've definitely talked about that before. Of like, I really stifle when I'm writing notes. Like, I have a harder time when there's not actual paper. And I think that we've discussed this lightly. I think that it might be in relation to my OCD, but having that tactile like pen to paper, it might also be related to like the fact that I'm a traditional artist, but it's so satisfying to me, and like I feel like I can really organize it, and I haven't really given the digital realm probably enough of a try to really say that I don't like it, but it's so satisfying when you have that like paper to pen. But do you ever feel like, is there differences for you that you experience when it comes to like writing in a notebook versus writing on your iPad?
Yes. I sometimes feel like I feel like I'm being kind of high maintenance when I do that, because, and this is not saying you're being high maintenance, it's saying in my brain, you are a capital R real, capital A artist, whereas I sometimes draw stuff. And so for me, it's like, well, it makes a difference, but I shouldn't be picky because, hey, I'm just drawing stupid stuff. But there is a thing called Paperlike, which is a screen cover that you can put on it that does make that tactile experience much more enjoyable.
Yeah, and I don't think digital artists aren't real artists. To be
oh yeah,
clear
no,
to
I wouldn't
anybody.
say that either. It's not about digital. It's about just the idea that there's amazing digital art made, but it's just the idea that that my skill level isn't at a point where I feel like I should be as picky about paper and pen as someone of your capability. So, but that again is my own brain. So.
But I feel like it's just the experience. For me, it has nothing to do with like a skill level. Like if I'm writing in a notebook, I'm not, I don't think like I'm equating that to like trying to make a really nice drawing. I just have like such a connection, I think, to the physical paper, and I have a really hard time distinguishing why that is when I talk to people. And I wonder if it really just comes down to the fact that there is a literal physical grip on your paper when you're writing, that it almost like maybe slows it down, because like I'm sure, as everybody knows, statistically, when you write things, you remember them, you process things, you digest them way differently than if you just like have thoughts that you don't express. And I wonder if there's something to that like grip that your paper holds that's different than the like the plastic to the screen.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Sounds totally valid to me. Again, it goes back to the other thing is that it's easier to take something from my iPad and then put it into, we've talked about this, into like, a computer, a task list or something like that. But honestly, as many different task lists as I've tried using in task apps, the one that is most consistent is the handwritten tasks that I do in my computer bullet journal, basically. So, Zoe brought up that they say that when you write it down, there are 100 ways to make a letter A, but when you type, there's only 2 ways of making the letter A. It uses your brain more to write on paper. Right,
but I wonder, what about writing on an iPad, which is what we're talking about. So like, it's a lot different than texting. You're still, or typing, you're still writing, but it's just a different medium, I suppose would be a way to say it.
I do think I've also heard that there are other tablets, like not the iPad, that are specifically designed to mimic the feeling of paper. There's one called the Remarkable, I think, that is supposed to be really good for that.
I mean, with stuff getting so much better with handwritten recognition, like handwriting recognition, it is a way different experience than like 5 years ago.
Yeah, agreed. Gianna, you want to say anything else about notebooks before we move into our last segment?
I'm good.
All right, cool. Any questions or comments from the chat about Jeannie says it's theoretical the act of writing is the neuromuscular memory trigger. Yeah. and the permanence of paper, Grimshot says, is what forces engagement. Less of my brain in there when there's an undo button. Yeah, but that's fair.
Yeah, those are both. Yeah, I would like to see some. I would like to see them do some research on writing on a digital format versus writing on physical paper.
Yeah, I suspect it's out there. Yeah, writing for school papers on paper versus typing. Yep. I actually, there's a content coach person named Ev Chapman, Evie Chapman, who I know of because we're actually adapting her content template to our own content stuff here at World Builders. But one of the controversial ideas that she has is that when you are reading something, you know, there's always that thing of, oh, you should highlight and you should, you know, keep a little highlighting notebook or cut and paste them all the ideas. She's like, no, don't do that, because then, like Grimshot said, there's not an investment. It's real easy to highlight something and just forget it. If it's important, you should write it in your own words, like in a different notebook, and then, you know, write it yourself, which is, it's appealing to me, and at the same time, like, but that would slow me down so much. But maybe that's the point, you know.
Oh man, it's so important to me, like the specifics of writing something out, because I don't think a lot of my classmates related to me in this way, but I think it's probably just because I'm a super visual person. My memory, if I write something out on the page, I will remember like what the page looks like. And then if I can just locate in my brain where I wrote that one item, the rest of the things will follow suit. So I can, like, if I remember where it was on the page, like what it actually looked like, my memory of that thing is pretty solid. And they used to, you know, have labels for this photographic memory, blah, 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 blah. But I think a lot of those are blown out of proportion because most people remember things visually. It's just, you know, you have these very exceptional cases of like stagnant photographic memory, which I don't think I have that or anything. It's just...
Oh man, my mother wanted me to develop a photographic memory, and boy, wasn't that some fun times. But I want to stop talking about notebooks and start talking about me.
Yeah.
Because I am. So I have mentioned. I don't know if I mentioned it on World Builders Weekly, but if you follow me on Twitter, if you think like that, I have talked about how I have a lot of different artistic outlets. You know, I play guitar, I sing, I do drawing, I do sketchnoting, I do writing. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Jeannie put in a link to a PDF there for you, Zay. At the same time, lately, I have found that I have a wall between me and actually doing something. And I have been trying to figure out how to get that past that. And I have been doing it by trying to structure my environment so that I would like have a sketchbook and pencils right here within reach, and my guitar is right over here, and you can see I have a Baroque ukulele right behind me that I can just reach out and do that anytime. And yet, somehow I don't seem to do that. Like, I know, Zay, I saw you in between tasks at one point, and you just pulled out your sketchbook and you were just sketching. And I'm like, why don't I do that? Why don't I do that? So, you may remember in chat Heather Slutsky, who was on here talking with Jamie about things. Oh, cool. Dan has the same struggle. Well, now we know what the common thread is there. It's Zay. We both know Zay, and so that's what it is. She must be like an energetic, creative vampire, and she just sucks the ability to really be creative.
Yeah, I'm Colin Robinson.
No, I don't think
that's energy.
Zay makes us feel shame, yes. I don't know why you say that. She just has that bell that she goes,
takes a shower, and washes the shams off you.
Anyway, I was talking about this issue with Heather Slutsky just yesterday. And you may remember Heather from talking with Jamie about doing rituals and celebrations. Well, I get to talk with Heather about every 2 weeks. And I mentioned this. And she came up with an idea that was so terrifying, I knew I had to try it out. And the idea, she said, have you ever tried to be on a creative fast? She said, you take the guitars and the sketchbooks and the pens and the pencils and things like that, and for 2 weeks, you put them away, they're out of sight, they do not exist. You the idea of creating things does not exist for you. And see how long you can go without creating before the urge comes. And I was like literally my face went pale. I'm like, what? The idea of saying, no, I am deliberately not going to create is terrifying. And I do believe very much that if something terrifies you that much, it's probably something you need to try and do. So, so I am trying that. I started it yesterday. And the weird part is, first of all, the minute I committed to doing it for 2 weeks, I have felt lighter and freer and like, oh my God, I feel like there's so much pressure off of me and things like that. At the same time, there is a building fear of, wait a minute, if it feels good to decide that I'm not going to be creative, does that mean that I am not really a creative person? What if I stop and I'm never, what if I'm like a shark, a creative shark? If I stop, I die. So it's going to be an interesting 2-week experiment. And Zay, I know I mentioned this to you earlier, and you said you had some thoughts about it. So
I have a couple of thoughts. One is me reacting right now live to this. I think you're a creative person, and I don't think that you could not be a creative person. I think it's just like a part of you, like your nature. But I am curious, while you're taking this break, are you allowed to capture any of the ideas that you think about? Like, you come up with this really cool idea. Are you allowed to just like write it down, but not like explore it until later?
So that's a good question. Yes. In terms of the prerogatives, one thing I decided that I could do was still keep journaling, because I want to document this process. I want to, I do a morning pages every day. So yes, I think that is true. I think it's kind of the difference between, yes, you can write down an idea if it comes to you, versus saying, okay, I am now going to generate 3 ideas or 10 ideas. That I'm not supposed to do.
Okay.
And I think it kind of has along the lines to do, sometimes in relationships, certainly not with you, Zaya, but I have found occasionally with relationships, sometimes it's fun to take a break from somebody because you again get to have the opportunity to miss them. And so I think that's kind of the idea with this art. It's like if I put away the sketch notes and things like that, instead of them feeling like an obligation, that they will feel like a long-lost friend that I haven't seen in a while or something.
I would argue we're not friends at work.
I'm not talking about, I'm saying I know you and your relationships, you would never have that problem, but me and my relationships, I mean, as far as seeing you, I can just cut off Zoom and you're gone, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, like, when it comes to friendships, most of my friendships are, I see that person once a month or less. So I don't know. I don't have any extended friendships where I see that person every day. It's really just not me. But
so Screenshot said I'm swapping discipline for inspiration.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that, like, it's interesting because you're a creative person, but I feel like artists get this rap for being this like messy kind of person, like expressive, inspiration, but like organization is generally not something that's attributed to traditional artists anyway. But I feel like you also have this
totally organized
inclination to, if you're not organized, at least like create this like special organizational focus around things, which I think that a lot of artists don't do. So it's interesting for me that during your creative fast, you're not allowed to come up with like 10 ways to draw a face or like something like this, because I don't think most artists like function that way. So I think it's interesting that you're not just allowed to do art, but you have to take away like the organizational aspects that you place around art, which
well, so I also think that you one of the big differences between you and I in terms of art is, I'm assuming that you've taken a lot of art classes, like in school.
In college,
okay.
In college, okay. I did do art so that I would keep doing art.
Right,
yeah.
Right. So I didn't. I'm one of those people who looked back at the high school notebooks and went, oh wow, they're full of doodles and drawings and things like that. And then when I grew up, I stopped drawing. and
Were
sort
you
of
not
didn't think
in
of myself
theater,
as
though?
somebody who could do that. So I think it's easier for someone who has had it as a discipline. Oh, it is time for me to sketch. This is a valid way to use my time. This is something to do. Versus somebody who's trying to integrate that in new, where every time I sketch or something, I am having a battle between, oh, you really should be doing something that's really productive, and who are you fooling? This isn't very good anyway. So there's
Because,
those
like, I
kind of
mean,
things.
because, like, art and creativity to me walk this same line. Like, I don't really distinguish them. Like, if I'm playing guitar, that's the same use of my time as if I'm drawing. But I'm not good at guitar. Like, I'm pretty mediocre, but lightly amateur at best. And please don't, I didn't mean to make the word amateur sound like, because I think it's an important and good word. But, the, but like you did theater and you did all these other creative things. So do you not in yourself like count that along the same lines as like taking time to like be drawing?
That's actually a really good point, because like doing a yoga workout is 100% legitimate use of my time, but that's because I used to spend 4 hours a day in college doing technique and composition and stuff like that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. That
So I wonder if it's,
I hadn't thought of those as analogous.
yeah, and I think it might be that you're applying like a label, like an amateur label to yourself when it comes to like your art, which I don't think uh, is necessary. Like when I see like your sketches, like your gesture drawings, for instance, that looks like any person that I'd be in class with, or the ones that I make. So I think sometimes maybe you just like recuse yourself from this, like I need to get better at it, when one, you're already good, or two, you just maybe don't relate it to these other types of creative processes that you think that you already have like a skill set for.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in that I would say that I know I can do gesture drawing, but then I see, for example, the kind of drawings that you do, the really hyper realistic anatomy drawings and things like that, and that I cannot do.
Yeah,
So
I mean, that's a whole other bag, I guess, because
right, and
I really don't like when people equate realism to good,
yeah.
because it's just it's not good for the art world.
That's actually
But
funny. I was talking with a friend who was saying, "Yeah, I really like doing things, but I don't like drawing things that are real. I just like putting swatches of color on things and just like looking at it. And that's not really art, is it?" I'm like, "Wow, if only you could think of some kind of a like non-realistic, or perhaps
abstract.
How about abstract? Maybe
Yeah.
No, that would never go anywhere. There couldn't be like degrees.
Doesn't
and
it break your
galleries.
heart when you like hear people talk about something that when they express themselves creatively and then they like stifle it because
Yes.
they look at like realism and they think, oh, I'm not good, and it's like, yeah, but that's your self-expression. It's beautiful, and in even some ways, because I've been going back to references a lot more because I find that my art just has better quality in what I'm trying to achieve. But in some ways, abstract is almost more pure than like this anatomical art, which I'm doing, which is kind of just like a representation of anatomical structure. Like it's not coming from my heart like directly to the page. It's me like kind of analyzing something and then like recreating it on paper, if that makes sense. And it's just like, it's so sad. But I think I'd like to point out that what you felt for this person and the way that they're talking about their
Right.
art is kind of exactly what you're doing to yourself.
I 100% agree, but that is the way of things. I bet Jeannie will personally back me up on this. It is much easier to help someone else with their personal problems than it is to deal with your own. So yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And Jeannie says abstract feels like it goes back to the very basic representation of line, space, and void to bring a message. And it's funny, yeah. Is that Zoe says, I feel like I am not artists. And like, we literally sell a book with her art in it. and yet the feeling is not there, which, and I'm laughing at the absurdity of the situation, not at you, Zoe, because I totally get the whole, the imposter syndrome kind of thing,
Yeah, and I mean, I do see how like it would be crazy for me to be like because Zoe's a graphic designer,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, she's saying that we
and
all feel that way. Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
and it is crazy because like in some ways, to some people, graphic design is art, and to some people, it's just like essentially like a type of marketing.
Hmm.
Um, and you know, a lot of times a graphic designer doesn't really, they're not like expressing some part of themselves. They're kind of like trying to represent a brand or representational of something.
Hmm.
So it would kind of be the weird, I think, to have these two worlds of like Zoe's like beautiful books where she illustrates these birds, and her which we sell on World Builders Market if you're interested, is hilarious.
Good plug.
Is also like different from this like I'm creating these posts for social media. Like it's kind of like the same part of your brain, but like you have to categorize them differently.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a ongoing thing. But yeah, I mean, basically, Karim Shad said, am I trading discipline for inspiration? I would argue that inspiration has never been the problem. The problem is having the discipline to actually do the stuff, because it takes discipline to actually pull it out and do something with it. Inspiration is easy. Uh, it's the actual doing something with it that is the difficult part, and the barrier that I'm trying to get over. So we'll see how it goes. In 2 weeks we'll have a World Builders Weekly, and I will give an update.
Inspiration is easy, everybody. You
Yep,
heard it from
inspiration is
Greg.
easy.
You're just always inspired.
Yep.
That's the part that I have a hard time with sometimes. But yeah. I mean, we
Okay.
went over time.
Yes, we did.
Obviously, we have no interests in these subjects.
Right.
So
So I think we have adequately embraced our geekiness on both of these topics. So thank you, everyone. Tune in next week. I think do we know who the guest is next week? I don't actually know. For the 20th, I know we know who the 27th is going to be. But if not,
correct.
you can definitely tune in next week. We will have another entertaining and interesting World Builders Weekly going on. We are hard at work behind the scenes. If you're hearing the sound of saws and hearing the sound of levels, no, that doesn't make sense. Anyway, this construction sounds you don't hear behind you is the sound of Jamie working with other people to make a nice little World Builders Weekly template, much like the ones that we had during the Geeks Doing Good fundraiser, with little animations and cute animals and things like that. And also, if you're coming to Gamehole Con, we're going to be there in person. And where is Gamehole Con? Madison, Wisconsin. Told you, everything cool happens in Madison, Wisconsin.
In October, I think.
That's in October, yeah. So that's the first real space thing we're planning on. We will also in September, though, be having a virtual presence both at Gen Con and at FIACon. So, because those happen the same weekend, but since we're doing it virtually, we can be at both. Yay! But yeah, tune in next time. Be sure to visit World Builders Market, and we're going to be putting up some cool stuff that we developed during Geeks Doing Good over the next few weeks. Mike is hard at work at getting his crew both sending out the things that have already been there. And I want to clarify something real quick, just to sort of nip it in the bud. We really appreciate those of you who bought more than one item, and we really don't want to penalize you for it, but we also are giving you free shipping on things. So if you ordered, say, Jamdrian, which we have in-house, and a set of rocks glasses, which are being produced and we don't have in-house yet, we're going to wait till the rocks glasses get here and send you both at the same time. Now, somebody else who ordered just the Jamdrian might get theirs beforehand because we already have that and are sending it out. So I hope you understand that, and I hope that it won't be considered a disrespectful thing, but it is more of just the trying to make sure we balance our workload and don't overdo it on our warehouse support staff. So hopefully that made some sense. Any closing? What should be our closing word, Zay?
Probably Viva Notes.
Viva Notes. Bye, everybody. Nota Notes? No. Viva Notes.
Bye, friends.